Super Rugby Trans-Tasman round number 3. 3 games on the Saturday. The Rebels and Highlanders won. That's been moved to Sydney, so no game in Queenstown, which is unfortunate. But yeah, pretty juicy looking Saturday games with the 3 games. Waratahs, Crusaders, Blues, Brumbies, and then Reds, Chiefs. We'll go through the squads, the predictions, some of the stats, and you guys can let me know your thoughts on how this weekend is going to play out. Is it going to be another 5-zip thing to the New Zealand teams, or can we see an Aussie team getting a result here? We have to wait and see. The first game, it's the Waratahs and the Crusaders. The Waratahs 9-2, Crusaders 2-0. That's the same with all these results. But the Crusaders are in 3rd and the Waratahs are in 8th. All the New Zealand teams are essentially chasing bonus points from what we can see, and we've seen the Hurricanes and the Blues go out to kind of top of the table leads based on getting full points, but they have played, at least based on the AU standings, the kind of bottom 2 teams. So it's the Crusaders' chance to get a crack at the team that finished winless in the AU season. But if there's one thing you'll say about this young Waratahs side is they certainly know how to generate attacking opportunities. It's just their defence that tends to be a wee bit lacking. They've kept things pretty stable. They've brought in Jeremy Williams into the second row. Jack Whetton's getting a start from the bench. Dempsey is also up from the bench. Perese is named again. Remember, he pulled out late last time. So Newsome had to move to the midfield. Newsome's back on the wing. Perese is back named in the midfield, but they've kept Harrison at fullback, interestingly, so they're essentially going with 2 first fives. Nawaqanitawase is on the bench, Tizzano's on the bench. The same front row, Porecki and Harry Johnson-Holmes. The 2 props have certainly been pretty good around the park. They'll need to prove it at scrum time. This one's being played at Wollongong as well. For the Crusaders, Strange gets a start. He was on the bench last week. Scott Barrett is back, so that's a bit of good news. McLeod's getting a start at 12. Otherwise, things are looking pretty stable. Like Jaeger's dropped to the bench, Alatoa's starting, Whitelock's down to the bench, Dunshea is down to the bench. They don't seem to have a specialist loose forward cover. I guess that's going to be Dunshea. Or maybe if Dunshea covers, then Scott Barrett drops to the loose. I don't know. Don't know that I've seen Dunshea play on the loose before. Someone tell me if I missed that. Burke is in the starting lineup along with Vela as well. Remember, Blackhead has got concussion. So just as that guy's career looks to be getting on fire, he suffers another setback. Well, hopefully it's not a long-term one. No temptation to rest Moeroa apparently, so he keeps going, and he has been on fire. If you look at the stats, interestingly, like I mentioned, the Tars can attack. You look at the tries. The Crusaders have scored 14. The Waratahs have scored 10. So that's your second best and your 4th best team respectively. So both of these sides kind of up there in terms of their try scoring. Clean breaks, 3rd equal with 23. Waratahs can generate attack. Carries 1st against 7th, actually. Waratahs make a lot of carrying, which seems kind of hard to believe, but I guess the carry stats can always be a bit of a tricky one. Like the Force make a lot of carries as well, but their clean break number is pretty low. The Crusaders have more run meters, for example, than the Waratahs, but the Waratahs make more carries. So that would suggest that the Crusaders are more efficient with the ball than what the Tars are. Defenders beaten is 4th and 5th. The Crusaders 4th, the Waratahs 5th. So attacking stats are actually pretty even. And the Crusaders' defensive stats aren't that flash. 83% for tackling. The Waratahs are at 80%. The Waratahs tend to concede a lot of clean breaks, though, where they don't even get a man into the space to cover the tackle. So, yeah, it's maybe a bit of a deceptive one just reading those numbers purely. Individuals, man, Richie Mo'unga, he is there. He's got 4 tries. He's 5th overall for clean breaks. He's 2nd overall for defenders beaten. He's just an absolute unit. But I've mentioned the props for the Tars. Harry Johnson-Holmes got 2 tries. And Gus Bell is like 6th overall for defenders beaten with 8. He got a fair few of those against the Blues, to be fair. But I guess, yeah, the question is here, what can the Waratahs do to improve their defensive game? Because their attack is certainly there. The Crusaders are a team that specialises in cutting teams to bits. That man Mo'unga seems to be a focal point for everything, so they'll need to watch him. But knowing it and doing it are 2 different things. So, yeah, I mean, for the Crusaders, they'll just need to be mindful of not letting the Waratahs get within taking a bonus point away. As at least what the predictions say it's going to be. Rugby Forecast algorithm says Crusaders by 14. The bookies have got it at 34. So yeah, the Waratahs are predicted not to be at the races for this one whatsoever. It's supposed to be all Crusaders. We will see. The next one is the Blues and the Brumbies. This one's at Eden Park. Now remember, the Waratahs kind of don't have a set home, so they move around week to week anyway. The Reds games at Townsville, the Hurricanes games at Napier, the Rebels and Highlanders one was supposed to be at Queenstown, but now it's been moved to Sydney with the COVID thing in Victoria. The Blues are the only ones kind of playing at their traditional home ground. So round 3 was supposed to be the super round neutral venues. The Blues have just gone to Eden Park. So kind of a bit of an advantage for the Blues there. I will be going to the game actually. My missus got tickets again from her work. Last time they gave them the tickets and then took them back. They've given the tickets. And wouldn't you know it, Sky, who are the broadcaster here in New Zealand, they're apparently calling up all their people who are subscribers, who pay them to watch the sports. They said, hey, we've got some tickets. Would you like to go? So never rains at pours, right? Anyway, so I'll be going to this game. Weather forecast is not great. It's an evening game, 7:15, so it's 10 minutes later than usual. That one's kind of it'd be a very early afternoon game in Australia because this is on at 5:05 in New Zealand, so it'd be like 3:05 in Australia, I guess. But I guess they're giving a bit of an extra 10 minutes to get home and watch the Blues game. I don't know why the game's been moved 10 minutes. But anyway, it's supposed to be a bit of a miserable day according to the weather forecast. We'll see, hopefully not. But yeah, the Blues, they're on top of the log, man. On top of the log. Now, as I said, they've played the Rebels and they've played the Waratahs. Scored a lot of points against the Rebels. Scored a lot of points against the Tars. Conceded a few against the Tars. But the Brumbies, after pushing the Crusaders close, had a bit of a stinker last week. So they definitely need to bounce back. Blues have kept things relatively stable as well. They welcome back Satutu, which is good news. Papali'i gets a start, which is great news because he's just been a beast at the breakdown. Renata gets a start at tight head. Lala's back on the side on the bench. Ruru's back on the side on the bench. Talea's back on the side of the bench. Akira Ioane has to drop to the bench because Satutu is playing. But otherwise, the rest of the squad looks pretty stable. And I've been watching, there's a really great interview. It's like an hour long with Ben Darwin talking about the success of the New Zealand teams. And he's a big believer in like the consistency and the chemistry of the players. So having a relatively unchanged lineup seems to be a few ticks in the boxes. That being said, the Brumbies have made a fair few changes. Remember, they are on their 3rd game of a New Zealand away tour, so it's been a tough start to the competition. McInerney gets a crack at hooker. Fainga'anuku's back on the bench. Valtini and Stowers swap spots. They were at 8 and 6 last week. Now they've switched to 6 and 8 with Valtini being at 6. Kusak's back at 7. Nick White is back, which is great news, at number 9. Hopefully he can control the game a wee bit. Maybe he's kind of a wet weather specialist. But otherwise, yeah, their lineup's relatively stable. Wright and Kata have looked dangerous. Banks is at 15. So yeah, pretty stable apart from the back row being completely different from what it was last week. The stats-wise, Blues are the 3rd top try-scoring team with 13. The Brumbies are down towards the bottom with 7. So just about half as many tries as the Blues have scored. Clean breaks, you've got 2nd against 7th. 37 against 13. Defenders beaten, that's actually pretty tight, 54 and 51. So 2nd and 3rd. So the Brumbies can beat defenders. They just don't tend to generate the clean breaks. Tackling percentage, they are pretty similar, 88%, 85% with the Blues, just edging it, despite the scoreline that they conceded against the Tars. And lineouts actually is one area that the Brumbies absolutely dominate. They're the top-ranked team at 97%. So their lineout is pretty special. It's just the go-forward stuff, which is at the moment lacking. And I think we saw that their set piece and maul, especially last week, was kind of kept in check, and the scrum was put under heaps of pressure. So yeah, that'll be an area they need to do pretty well because the Blues have got some All Blacks in their propping ranks for sure. Not Renata, but Tuinukuafe, Laulala, and Hodgman are all actually 3 out of the 4. Tries, Heem's got 3, Valtini's got 2. Clean breaks, Heem is the 2nd best in the competition with 8. He's been on fire. Defenders beaten, Akira Ioane, Heem, and Rieko Ioane are all doing really well. Solomon Akata, though, is the number 1 guy in the competition. Remember, he got like 10 defenders beaten last week in a losing effort. So they'll Good Hughes, the line-out man for the Blues. He's 8th, but the Brumbies have got the number 1 and 2 guys with Swain and Frost, and those are their starting locks for this game. So, yeah, I feel like the Brumbies have to bounce back after a pretty disappointing result last week. The Blues get the chance to test themselves against, at least on the AU rankings, is a much tougher opponent than what they've seen in the last 2 weeks. So they will need to be sharp. I mentioned Ben Darwin talked about the Blues traditionally being a bit of a flat track bully and that they tend to dominate the weaker teams but struggle with the better teams. This will maybe be a good test for them in that regard. The bookies have got the Blues by 13. Rugby Forecast Algorithm's got the Blues by 8. I do think the fact they're at Eden Park is a little bit of an advantage. And the last one is the Reds and the Chiefs. Now, if there's a side that absolutely needs a good performance, it's the Reds. Utterly disappointing in the first 2 rounds, to say the least. The Chiefs have done pretty well. They gave the Brumbies a bit of a hiding, and they did decent enough in their away trip to Perth, which has proved to be a pretty difficult destination because the Highlanders didn't have it all their own way either. So, yeah, Brad Thorne's made a few changes. Fotuaika starts after being on the bench, but Fainga'anuku and Tupou is the same in terms of the front row. Scott Young is in at 6. Wright moves to 7, and Wilson's still at 8. Remember, Wilson was on fire last week, one of the real bright spots, and a very bitterly disappointing performance. That does mean that McCrate drops to the bench, but Dalguna gets a crack at 11. Isaac Henry's getting a crack at 12. And I don't mean to harp on about this Ben Darwin thing. It was honestly a really good watch. I'm into my stats and stuff, so that was quite interesting. But he talked about midfield as being crucially important as well. So that may be one area for the Chiefs to exploit because they've kept their midfield dead solid for the last few weeks running. Stewart's dropped to the bench to make way for Henry. Droasesa's on the bench. Nongor Xander drops to the bench. Nasser's on the bench. So, yeah, there's been quite a few changes. I guess the core of the squad, Paenga, Mosa, Wilson, McDermott, James O'Connor, that kind of spine is largely the same. But, yeah, it's not going to be an easy one, man, because the Chiefs have been looking good. They've kept things a lot more stable. Slater and Ta'avao are changes in the front row, though, but Ta'avao's a good guy to have back in the squad. Same locks, same Lucy's, same 19 combo, Weber and D-Mac. Weber's captain, same midfield, Nankiville ALB. They've made some changes to the back 3 with Tia moving from fullback to left wing, Balin Sullivan moving to the right wing from the left wing, and then Trask coming up from the bench to start at fullback where Tia was last week. Messam drops to the bench, Tupai is up into the squad. Mafaleo is dropping to the bench. O'Neill's back in the squad. Tokiaho drops to the bench. So a bit of rotation, I would say, more than kind of wholesale changes. A fair few changes to the bench. But, yeah. If Messam drops to the bench, then Sawakula must have swapped places with him. I didn't underline him there. Yeah, Sawakula was on the bench last week from memory. The head-to-head stuff, tries are pretty even, 7-9 with the Chiefs edging that one. Clean breaks, 16-11. The Chiefs are kind of mid-table. The Reds are down towards the bottom at generating those. Defenders beaten 6th against 8th. The Chiefs are 6th. Tackling percentage, 80% for the Reds, which is getting dangerously low. The Chiefs are at 84. Line out, though, the Chiefs are the worst team in Super Rugby Trans-Tasman. They are operating at 76%, which is 1-4 going astray. The Reds are closer to 90%, so at least at that area they are a little bit more reliable. Individuals, Vunivalu's got 3 tries. Jacobson's got 2 tries. Remember, Jacobson is playing this week alongside Boshier, so look out because both of those guys have been on fire. Boshier is the second top tackler in the competition with 38. That being said, Liam Wright's 3rd with 26. So you got 2 of the top tacklers going against each other in this one. ALB dominates some of the clean breaks and the defenders beating statistics. So that's why you do look at the Reds midfield and maybe worry just a touch. Remember, this one's being played at Townsville, so it is a neutral-ish ground. Although I know from some of the comments, Townsville can be a pretty ferocious place for away teams to travel to, so we'll see what the turnout is like for this one, especially with the Reds backing up after 2 really bad games. Chiefs by 5 is what the algorithm says, and Chiefs by 6 is what the bookies say. So on paper, this one is predicted to be the closest of the 3. 9:45 over here in New Zealand is the kickoff time, so 7:45 over in Australia, I guess. But yeah. Definitely some big performances needed from the guys for the Reds because, as I said, the campaign thus far has been pretty disappointing. And the Chiefs are under pressure to kind of match the performances of the Highlanders and the Crusaders in the opening 2 rounds, where the bonus points are just phenomenally important, seemingly, for the log. But yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts. Are you going to any of the games? Which games are you most looking forward to? Any games you're going to tune out? Like, are you going to watch the Waratahs and Crusaders with the prediction that the bookies have got it by 34? I know some people are starting to switch off. You know me, I'll watch them all. I may miss some of that one because I'll be traveling to the Blues game. But anyway, you guys let me know your thoughts. Thanks to Sky for hooking me up with some tickets. That's a first. I've been a Sky subscriber for years and they have never given me tickets. Maybe there's just people who don't want to go to the games, or am I overthinking this? Is this Sky just trying to retain their loyal customers? I don't know. Anyway, you guys take care, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.